Good morning, Nate here with the Volunteer Tech Vlog on the Live Sound 101 YouTube channel. We got some snow this morning, love it. It's April 5th and we got good old snowstorm. Anyway, this video is a response for Joshua. I won't mention your last name because I don't know if you want your last name shared, but this is for Joshua, someone who I don't know, but I saw they posted something, not just on one forum on Facebook, but it's one of those funny things where you see the same thing posted to multiple places, and it like Facebook gives you like a list of all the places. So it was posted at like Church Tech Gurus, Church Sound Media Techs, and a couple other places. So if you're part of the same group or forum on Facebook, you can see. So I saw that this person, Joshua, whom I don't know, that I'm trying to help out, posted this question, and it was, let's see if I can remember it off the top of my head when I'm driving. It said something like this: 4K TV question. We just bought some cheap Hisense 4K smart TVs at Wal-Mart. I think they were on the cheaper side. So we bought these TVs. Now, are there any cable or satellite companies that can enhance the experience? So that was kind of like Joshua was looking for help, like okay, so I got this 4K TV basically, now what? How do I get 4K content? And this is kind of the big dilemma with 4K right now, because truth be told, the cable companies, the satellite companies, and even over-the-air digital broadcasts in the ATSC format are not ready for 4K content. I should say UHD content. Now here's the first thing that you need to be aware of is the term 4K and the term UHD are actually two different things. So 4K is often, when somebody says 4K, everybody knows what they mean. They mean the new TVs that have more pixels. Now, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details, if you're an integrator like me, so I work in systems integration, I'm also a volunteer tech at church, so I have to keep track of all this stuff because it's my job. The term 4K really, because words have meaning, relates to a resolution from cinema, which is 4096 pixels by 2160 pixels. So 4096 by 2160 is technically 4K. UHD, ultra high definition, is anything greater than 1920 by 1080. So 1920 by 1080 is kind of the de facto, high def. Ultra high def being anything more than 1920 by 1080. So 2160 by 3840 is really the resolution that most people are talking about. When they say 4K, when you see 4K written on the side of the box, they're talking about 2160, I'm sorry, 3840 by 2160. So I actually prefer the term 2160 as opposed to using 4K or UHD, because it's more specific and I know exactly. Okay, you're talking 2160? Okay, I know what you mean. If you're talking 4K, well, now you're talking 4096 by 20. But anyway, that's just a little bit of nitty-gritty stuff that you should be aware of. So most TVs that you say that you see that have 4K / UHD inside of the box, it's going to be 3840 by 2160. Now, so that's the first thing to just wrap your head around is getting your resolutions right. Now, the second thing, especially in the church world, now you mentioned cable or satellite. So DirecTV satellite is claiming that they can deliver, I gotta turn the air on a little bit, it's getting a little foggy in here. They're claiming that they can do 4K, but it's very limited. So you're gonna pay a lot of extra money and you're not gonna get much content for that. And truth be told, it's some sort of squashed, compressed version of 4K that they're just trying to get out the door as fast as possible. It's not going to be like a knock your socks off 4K type of situation, UHD situation. The other thing I know that DirecTV is doing, might be DirecTV, might be another company, is they're saying you can get this content, these movies in 4K, but what's really happening is they're downloading this content locally to So what's really happening is they're downloading this content locally to your box, to the memory of your internal memory of your box, and you're just watching that 4K on-demand movie, for example, locally. So I know there's a little bit of that going on. So you don't have a lot of options. And truth be told, too, with the ATSC over-the-air broadcast, many times the over-the-air broadcast is higher quality than that of the cable and satellite companies. And at least with over-the-air broadcast, they can do 1080i or 720p. I know for me, living in the Boston area, Fox likes to broadcast in 720p. It looks great. And then a lot of the other channels, the local channels, usually do 1080i. So even with the current technology now, we're not even doing 1080p yet. And now all of a sudden we've got this big push to do 2160 by 3840. What? Like, we're just not, broadcast has got a lot. It's going to be a long road before you're seeing any ultra HD content coming over the air broadcast. Now, on the internet, on YouTube, you can get some 4K stuff over YouTube. Again, it's going to be compressed. I forget which algorithm that they're using to compress it, with H.265 maybe, or GP9 or something or other. I can't remember exactly what algorithm they use, but you could get I believe you can get some Netflix stuff in 4K, and you can get some YouTube stuff in 4K if your smart TV has the app built into it, and you can just Ethernet connection right to the back, and boom, watch right from there. But that's probably not going to be all that useful for you in your situation. Now, the other thing I mentioned was HDR. So when you hear the term UHD, it's got a few things going on there. So there's the pixels was the first thing that came to market, was more pixels. Everybody lost their mind over more pixels, which is cool. But keep in mind, when you increase the pixels, there's a set distance where there's an optimum viewing distance for a specific display, because of the human eye and the amount of resolution the human eye can see. There's a certain distance. Now think about that. With 1080p, the distance might be 3 times the height, or 3 times the width of the screen. There's different rules of thumb that you can go by. But whatever that distance is, take a 16-inch display. You've got, say 10 feet. Just off the top of my head, I'm just making up numbers. So you've got that 10 feet. Now you take that same 16-inch display, and you double the pixels, or you quadruple the pixels. Now what's the optimum viewing distance? The optimum viewing distance is now halved or quartered, depending on how many more pixels you have. So if you're sitting at the same distance that you are with a 1080p display, and that is your task, that is the distance that makes sense for whatever task you are doing, whether you're reading digital signage display, or if it's in church, if it's a stage display, you're getting all these pixels. But it really doesn't matter unless you're getting your nose. You're not going to see the detail unless you get your nose right up into that display. So that's another thing to keep in mind. More pixels isn't always a better thing. So when I hear people talk about using UHD 4K in church, there are very few use cases. There are some use cases, but those aren't going to make much sense for large format displays that people are reading lyrics and sermon notes off of. They might make sense for a stage display. It might make sense for a tech operator in a control room somewhere. But 4K in the church, gotta question that. Now, as somebody who makes tech decisions for my church, I question that. So, not ruling it out, but what I was really getting to was HDR. So HDR, I talked about the pixels. HDR is this new thing where essentially high dynamic range is what it stands for, and what we're talking about is darker darks, blacker blacks, and brighter whites. Not just that. So we're extending how dark a display can go, and we're extending how bright a display can go, and we're also adding more different color variations in between. So an increased and enhanced color gamut. Now I would argue that HDR I would argue that HDR with the enhanced color gamut is going to be more effective to enhancing your experience than simply more pixels. Here's the problem. the standards have not been ratified or widely adopted yet. So what do you have at this point in time? This is April 2016. You've got all these 4K UHD TVs hitting the market. The prices are coming down, and they simply have one aspect of UHD. They've got more pixels. They don't have necessarily an increased color gamut. They're not exactly, that is to say, they're not HDR yet, but they have more pixels. So what you'll find is that once the HDR spec, which right now they've got what they're calling HDR 10, which is a specification that's been adopted by, I think, two different, I don't know if it's Sony and LG, but I can't remember which, but I think it's been adopted by at least two manufacturers at this point. You're gonna have content that's gonna be authored for HDR, but your display may or may not support HDR. So that's why I say it's questionable. It's not the best time to buy a UHD TV right now. Now, the other big thing, let's see, what have I talked about? So I've talked about the resolution, I've talked about HDR, the last big thing is HDCP 2.2. So that stands for High Definition Copy Protection version 2.2. This is a big one. So HDMI is the signal transport that many of these displays use. I think pretty much all of them use HDMI. Now, with HDMI 2.0, they did 2.0 version A. They left room for supporting HDR. So HDR can, in some form, I forget how many bits. It's bit limited though to the previous HDMI spec, but you can. There is room in there to do some wider color gamut stuff. But the big thing with HDCP, the copy protection. Now this is from Hollywood. This is Hollywood's mechanism to keep their content protected and safe. So you've got a Blu-ray player, maybe it's a 4K Blu-ray player, UHD Blu-ray player that can support these UHD, and it's gonna have to be HDCP 2.2. So the Blu-ray player is going to be HDCP 2.2, and your TV is going to need to be HDCP 2.2. If your TV is not HDCP 2.2, it's not going to pass that ultra high definition signal. It just won't. So, like I said before, you've got all these TVs flooding the market that don't have HDR yet. They don't necessarily have HDCP 2.2 yet. They might have HDCP 2.1 or 2.0. Well, that's great. You might have a 4K TV without HDCP 2.2. What does that mean? That means when you buy a 4K Blu-ray player down the road and hook it up, it's not going to support that signal because HDCP 2.2 is not backwards compatible. So that is like the big gotcha when it comes to all this stuff, and why I'm very hesitant to switch over to UHD at this point in time. Anyway, that's my take on it. That's my perspective. You might have a use case that merits UHD, but I would argue that there's a lot of reasons why you should hold off at this point in time until the HDR is baked in to whatever standard comes down the road, and definitely make sure it's HDCP 2.2 compliant. I've seen, and I'll tell you what, I've seen displays that are upwards of $20,000 that aren't HDCP 2.2 compliant. So what does that mean? That means that you're gonna spend $20,000 on a large format UHD display that looks amazing, except it's not going to be backwards compatible with certain media players and things that come out down the road. Now maybe that doesn't matter to you. So anyway, this has been my long rant and spiel about the difference between 4K UHD and why it might not be a great time to purchase it. And with that, I will sit in traffic because I am stuck. Have a nice day.